Everyone. Ryan Sheppard, partner with Knight Rolleri Sheppard CPAs here in Fairfield, Connecticut. We also have an office in Greenwich. Today, what I'm going to talk about is the time frame, the right time frame when to apply for PPP forgiveness, as well as a couple of other aspects of the PPP program. For one, we're getting a lot of questions on, when do you apply for forgiveness under the program? There's a lot of information out there, and as you know, it was very fluid at the time. So information was changing from SBA, from Treasury Secretary, from this and that. And as you can imagine, it creates a lot of confusion. So I'm here to sort of clarify a lot of that information. So first of all, when to apply? Well, the application date is really within 10 months after what's called your covered period. Now, what's a covered period? A covered period is the time frame you use in order to expend the funds that you received under the PPP program. In that scenario, by default, after a couple of rule changes, it's actually a 24-week covered period. Now that time frame starts the day you got your proceeds. So from the day you got your proceeds for 24 weeks after, you have that time frame to use the funds. And then from 10 months forward from that date, you then can apply for forgiveness through your bank. You can make an election to use a shorter 8-week covered period. However, there's really no reason to do that. I mean, 24 weeks gives you additional time to expend the funds. And so that's something I would recommend that everyone do. It also gives you more time to actually apply for the forgiveness. So if it's 24-week covered period and then 10 months after that, as you can see, it gives you plenty of time to actually apply for the forgiveness. Quick example. So let's say you got your loan on April 20th. So you got it relatively early on during the crisis. Your covered period would end October 4th of 2020. And that means you would have to apply for forgiveness by August of 2021. So as you can see, you generally have plenty of time to actually apply for that forgiveness. The other thing to think about here is, as they continue to change procedures, and there's also some pending legislation in Congress that may affect some of this, it also behooves you to wait a little bit. There is a pending bill in Congress through the Senate Bill 4321 that basically would automatically forgive any PPP loans at $150,000 or less with just a certification that you use the funds like you were supposed to use the funds. So for that reason, also, it's something that, don't jump through hoops right now when something like that could actually change and make your life just a lot easier. So my recommendation right now is just wait and let that flesh out. Now, the reality is, with that particular bill, the likelihood of anything happening before the election is remote. However, there is bipartisan support for the bill, so that's a positive. I do expect something to happen with that, but to be determined. But for now, I think the appropriate step is to wait for that. The other thing they did recently was provided a simpler loan forgiveness application. Now, anytime the government says something is simpler, it's hard to believe, right? So, simpler to them may not be simpler to everybody else. And that's for loans that are $50,000 or less. Now, I've taken a look at that loan application. It is relatively simple. You just have to certify a few things, sign it, send it in, and it's pretty much forgiven at that point. So even though the government says, yeah, this is simpler, this one actually isn't too bad. So we'll give them credit for that one. The other issue to think about, and this is a big one, when Mnuchin came out and said that when the forgiveness of PPP debt is treated as income, he said this would be considered tax-free income. Right? So you take out the note, you now have it forgiven. It now gets to be income, and which means you don't have to pay it back, and it's going to be tax-free. So they're not going to tax you on that income. However, the IRS did a little bit of an end around on this particular issue. And in Notice 2020-32, they effectively said that any expenses you use from the PPP funds will not be deductible. And I said to myself, well, wait a minute now. You've effectively just taxed the PPP monies. You did a sort of a workaround to what the Treasury Secretary said, and I think what the intent of the bill was. So I think the IRS is dead wrong in this particular matter, and I've stated that before. So, you know, now someone who gets a PPP loan forgiven at $100,000, well, it's no longer worth $100,000 because they're gonna disallow all the expenses that you used the $100,000 for. So in reality, it's only worth, call it $60,000, and that's not good, right? So at the end of the day, you're using this money for those expenses, and it's supposed to be tax-free, so gross of tax, you know, no tax. But now, without deducting those expenses, you have to add those expenses back when it's tax return time. And, you know, not a lot of people are thinking about that, but in reality, you know, some people may have a little bit of a tax hit here in that these expenses will not be deductible, at least as it stands today. We'll continue to watch. There is some pending legislation on that avenue too, to allow that to be deductible. That also has some bipartisan support. So we'll see what happens. But again, Ryan Sheppard, partner with Knight Rolleri Sheppard, and hopefully this helps answer some of the questions related to the PPP program.